Welcome to the Hard Hat Training Series. We have just a few minutes to cover the ins and outs of the required pre-shift or pre-trip inspection. I want to get right down to the point. I know these inspections can seem pointless, monotonous, repetitive, or even a waste of time. I've seen a lot of operators whip through them without really paying attention, more out of habit than anything. I've also seen even more skip them altogether. But the reality is, inspections are required of you daily because every day brings with it the potential for accident. That's the life of those working on or around heavy equipment. So under no circumstances should you skip or skimp when it comes to consistently and thoroughly inspecting your equipment prior to use. Inspections are preventative in nature, meaning if you do them right, they will prevent accidents from happening. They might even save your life or the lives of those you work with. Case in point, just under a year ago, a worker was backed over and killed while digging around an excavation. And how did this happen? There are always a lot of little things that lead up to big accidents. But in this particular case, investigators had a couple of key things specific to our topic today. One, the excavator was equipped with a backup camera, but it wasn't working. And two, the operator had not performed a pre-shift inspection. These two oversights, among others, took the life of the operator's friend and longtime co-worker. To hopefully avoid that is why we will be walking you through how to do a pre-shift inspection, what to look for, and what to do if you find something wrong. Of course, like any task, before you begin you need to make sure you have the appropriate gear for the job. Most often that entails PPE like a hard hat, safety glasses, gloves, and steel-toed boots. If you're working around other equipment that is coming and going, you'll want to have a high visibility vest too, or you'll want to mark off the area. You may also want or need things like ear protection or a mask to prevent the inhalation of dust or other harmful agents. Some other items will be helpful. We've laid them out on the table here. A flashlight so you can better see hoses and wiring, a wire brush to brush away any rust or dirt or buildup, a piece of cardboard which we will discuss later, and of course a clipboard with an inspection checklist to properly record your observations. After all, doing the inspection ultimately means very little if you don't report your findings and act on them accordingly. You'll also want to make sure that you have the operator's manual handy and that any maintenance labels are readily available and legible. These are vital because they often contain the list of things you need to check as well as the manufacturer's recommendations for routine maintenance. With that in mind, let's go down the list. We're going to start with what is commonly called our key-off checks, meaning that these are things we can inspect without the equipment running. From there, we will move on to key-on checks where we will inspect the operational functionality of the loader. Let's begin on the ground as we walk around looking at the exterior of the machine. The track system is a good place to start. It's been said that the track system often accounts for 50% or more of an excavator's lifetime repair bill. This is especially true if it's not consistently and properly maintained. So don't overlook the value of checking each component thoroughly before use. Before your inspection, take the time to clear any compacted dirt or rock. This will ensure you can see any hidden damage. A clean track also improves efficiency, which consequently extends life expectancy. Generally speaking, the track system is made up of several basic components. The track and frame, steel guide wings or rubber lugs, the chain assembly, a series of rollers, pins, idlers, and sprockets, and in many cases a rock guard. Depending on your excavator, the track will be all steel, all rubber, or a combination of the two. While extremely durable, the track plates and grousers or cleats and their components still need to be looked over for any signs of damage or excessive wear. This would especially be true if the industry you're in, like demolition, continuously exposes the track to sharp objects. If your excavator has rubber tracks, pay attention to the tread looking for cuts, gouges, or embedded foreign material like rebar or other metal objects. The rollers, idlers, sprockets, teeth, guide wings or rubber lugs, and the rock guard also need to be inspected for damage and addressed immediately if the damage will affect safe operations. Look over the dry seals for leaks. Make sure that you check both sides of the track. Aside from that, it's important to know that track tension should be checked periodically, typically every 50 hours. Loose tracks that are not maintained or tightened can cause the track to fall off. On the other hand, tracks that are too tight wear out faster and can cause damage to the sprockets, idlers, and rollers. Always refer to your operator's manual for proper track tension maintenance procedures. Welds cover the chassis and body of the excavator from front to back, top to bottom. You don't need to spend a ton of time here, you're basically just looking for anything that jumps out as you as a serious or potentially serious crack. But do take the time to look at the undercarriage as well. As needed, take the time to brush away any dirt or rust in order to properly assess the integrity of the weld. It's not uncommon to find serious cracks forming underneath years of accumulated dirt and grime. Aside from the welds, look the body over for any damage that will hinder excavation operations. The rotation bearings that connect the superstructure to the chassis and any associated bolts should be included in this portion of the inspection. Make sure that they're tight and not stretched. The hydraulic components of your machine are vital to smooth, efficient, and safe operations. And yet we see a lot of machines where these components are not properly cared for. Look for scratches, bends, or other damage that might prevent them from opening and closing as intended. The couplers should be fastened on correctly and free from leaks. The hoses need to be checked for leaks too. If you see signs of leaking fluids, don't just place your hand back there. Even if you have a pinhole-sized leak, the extreme pressure in these hoses is enough to send that fluid stream right through your skin, leading to extensive tissue damage and sometimes the complete loss of a finger, hand, or limb. For this reason, you'll want to use a piece of cardboard or a clipboard as we mentioned earlier. Just stick it behind the hose and then check it for any signs of leaking. It's not uncommon to see a machine with labels that are covered by mud, damaged or worn to the point of illegibility or missing entirely. It's easy to overlook replacing these labels. Yet the standards require it. They are there for a reason, to warn against hazards. And from a liability standpoint, imagine someone puts their hand down on a component and burns themselves, only to find out there was a missing label warning against it. There is liability there that won't go unnoticed by the investigators or courts if it comes to it. Best practice is to avoid any mishaps by quickly replacing labels. A quick call to the manufacturer will usually do the trick. This goes for capacity and maintenance labels too. The steps and handrails may seem of little consequence, but it isn't unusual to see them missing or damaged. As a result, it is typical to see operators extending a little more effort or bending back into uncomfortable, unstable positions to reach the next step and get up into the machine. Because slips, trips, and falls are a frequent catalyst for workplace accidents, that damaged first step or handrail really should be repaired. While you're at it, clean off any buildup first. It might be hiding weaknesses or other damage on the components. Check all of the linkage and grease points. Make sure that there are no seized pins or areas lacking lubrication and that the overall structural integrity is still reliable. If more grease is needed, clean the area well and then add grease according to the manufacturer's guidelines. Too little naturally causes excessive wear, but too much can also result in energy loss, accelerated wear, and component failure. Because of the wear and tear attachments go through daily, you'll want to pay a particular attention to them. The bucket, of course, is the most common, so inspect closely the cutting edge or teeth if your bucket has them. They should be free from excessive damage, as should any hardware like pins or bolts that secure them. Make sure they are connected properly and that the hydraulic hoses and cylinders are clean and free from leaks. Damage or leaking here could lead to loss of power and greater damage to the machine or its surroundings. Check any lifting points on the back of the bucket. If they have a safety latch, the gate should not be broken, taped back, or overly slow to respond. If you're using something other than a bucket, like a compactor, hammer, auger, grapples, or a thumb, they too need to be inspected. Many excavators come equipped with a grater or leveling blade either on the front or back of the machine. Once again, due to their constant use, take the time necessary to ensure it is secured properly, clean, and free from damage. The maintenance schedule and your operator's manual will guide you through checking the engine compartment. Sometimes you'll also see labels affixed to the inside of the door of this same compartment. These come with places where you can sign and date, signifying you've completed the inspection and required maintenance. You don't have to use them, but everyone on site should be on the same page. Too often we see maintenance labels that are partially filled out with 1 or 2 entries. As an inspector, it's hard to know then if these important inspections have been done at all since the last date. If you don't use them, make sure you have kept some sort of record. Everyone should know where to access it and how to fill it out properly. Clear away any excessive dirt or grime buildup, especially around the fans, fins, and batteries. Test the belts for proper tension and wear. Along with that, check any other wiring and hoses for cracks or leaks. Check to see that the fluids are sufficiently full. If any oil filters need to be replaced, do so. Take the time to clean the hydraulic fluid level indicator. They should not be so that you cannot easily discern the fluid levels. Pull out the air filters and clean them off or replace them as necessary. The machine should have the correct fuel for the job, including diesel exhaust fuel if your particular excavator is so equipped. While it may seem obvious, it should be noted at this point it's a good idea to make sure you have enough fuel for the job at hand. The term ROPS stands for Rollover Protective Structure. This system is in place to protect you in case of an accident, and there are strict standards governing its structural integrity. If the ROPS has been compromised by way of a rollover or some other incident, then it shouldn't be used until it can be further inspected and approved by an engineer or appropriately fixed. There are several lights on an excavator, and they each have a specific purpose to increase visibility and extend vision during darkness or inclement weather. Missing or broken lights aren't unusual, but the standards require you to change them out. Don't chance having an accident because you can't see clearly. Not long ago, an excavator with broken lights backed up into another employee's work truck. Luckily no one was hurt, but damage could have been prevented had someone taken the time to replace the bulbs and take a little extra care before backing up. If your machine has a fire extinguisher in a designated box on the outside of the machine, make sure you can access it as needed. Of course, it should be in working condition and tested according to the standard. You do not want to discover the extinguisher isn't working or that you need a key to unlock it while you're trying to put out a fire. Now let's take a look inside the cab. And while we're there, we will perform our key-on checks. These are all about testing the functionality to make sure the machine does what it's supposed to do. It's as simple as that. Of course, before moving into the cab, you'll want to make sure you use the 3 points of contact as you get inside. The cab should not look like your childhood closet. We often see tools, trash, window cleaner, drink bottles, and even fire extinguishers spread across the floor. But these are things that need to be stowed properly so as not to distract or impede pedal operations. Make sure the seat is in good condition and can be easily adjusted to fit your needs. MSDs, or musculoskeletal disorders, are considered the single largest category of workplace injuries and lost work time. That being said, it's important you take care of your back by making sure the seat is not falling apart. The operator's manual is required to be on the machine in a legible condition. Every operator should read it and be familiar with its contents, especially the section relating to hazards and safe operation. The seatbelt is a device designed to save your life. If it's tearing or doesn't lock in properly, it needs to be replaced. Some belts actually expire after a period of time, so you'll want to be aware of any upcoming expiration dates. Just pull it out and check the tag on the side to know for sure. Like the exterior labels, warning labels on the inside of the cab are just as important and need to be replaced if missing or if the message or safety principle is no longer clear. Keep the glass and mirrors clean. Your ability to see clearly and instantly detect if there is something wrong could be the difference between a safe workplace and one prone to accidents. Not long ago, a worker was struck by the bucket when the operator suddenly rotated the machine, swinging the stick to the side. He claimed that he looked to make sure no one was in his way, but that the dirt and glare must have kept him from seeing clearly. Because you're working in dusty conditions, filters should be checked and replaced regularly. The inner cab filters tend to be ignored most often, meaning they are not doing their job and the air inside the cab is not as comfortable nor as safe as it should be. As mentioned, the fire extinguisher needs to be in good working condition, tested appropriately, and affixed to the wall or in a designated box. Generally speaking, the instrument panel should be properly labeled. You need to know what each button, dial, lever, pedal, or switch does and what any indicators mean. You also need to take a moment to make sure these function as designed. Heaters and air conditioning are vital when working in hot or cold conditions. If they're not working, get them fixed instead of adding layers or keeping the door open for additional airflow. The horn can be an extremely important tool. Test it so you rely on it as needed to warn other vehicles or pedestrians of your presence. The stick and bucket controls too need to be properly labeled. Then test each one of them to make sure they respond without delay or other issues. This of course holds true for other attachments you may be using. Once they are connected, you should always test them before use. If your bucket has a thumb on it, make sure it opens and closes when needed. Extend the boom and stick entirely, open the bucket, then retract or curl them entirely as if you were stowing the excavator away for the day. To further test the functionality of the machine, you will need to put it in motion. Find a level piece of ground. Rotate the superstructure 360 degrees. Then take the time to turn the excavator by testing both the right and left tracks separately. Test both at the same time, drive forward and backward. Stop and go several times, paying close attention to the response time. When backing up, make sure the backup camera and alarm are operational. As alluded to at the outset of this video, the backup alarm must be operational and loud enough for others to hear. The parking brake or P-brake also needs to be tested and proven to be in proper working order. And that's all there is to it. It doesn't have to be overly extensive. In fact, if you're doing them often and maintaining the machine or addressing issues as required, then your walk-around inspection becomes just that, a fairly quick walk-around. In all cases, if you find damage, record it and report it. If it poses a threat to safe operations, lock and tag out the machine. find another one to use, or suspend operations until the one you need is fixed. Too often we see operators justifying small issues in order to get the job done now. We understand the importance of time and efficiency and deadlines and money, but at the end of the day, these things pale in comparison to someone's health and well-being. Certainly, someone's life is worth more than deadlines and money as well. Remember, it is often several small issues that have been overlooked over time that collectively lead to one big accident. The pre-shift inspection is designed and required for the sole purpose of helping you discover and address those small issues so you can get your job done safely. Good luck and stay safe.